Hey you guys, this is Dishing It with Dani, where we're serving up more than just talk.
That's right. That means we'll be bringing you lots of great conversation, but more than that, we're bringing you the word live and direct from the streets. We're bringing the latest perspective in business and entrepreneurship, and we're also bringing you great conversations with some of the best thinkers and doers in their respective fields.
That's right. Today in studio, we're going to be talking about social injustice, and in particular, poverty. We have the founders of two local charities, and we're going to be discussing how poverty affects both men and women in our society. So stay tuned, you guys.
Filtration for you, and pure, one quick and easy installation, and pure, water filtration for you.
Your own supply of pure drinking water right from your N-Pure faucet. N-Pure removes the widest range of tap water contaminants by world-class engineering for long-lasting operation.
And pure, water filtration for you.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to Dishing It with Dani. As we said before, we're talking about matters of social injustice on today's episode, specifically looking at poverty.
That's right.
And here in the studio, we have two founders of two registered charities here in Barbados. We have Shamelle Rice, who is the founder and director of Jabez House.
That's
and
right.
we have Kemar Saffrey, who is the founder and president of the Barbados Vagrants and Homeless Society.
You guys,
Welcome, guys.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having us, Dani and Dani. It's really good to be here.
Thank you for having us, guys. I really appreciate it.
So, Shamelle, could you tell us about Jabez House?
So Jabez House is a registered charity here on the island, and basically we are a safe space for female sex workers, and we basically seek to provide the facilitation of their transition from being involved in sex work. And we primarily do this through entrepreneurship and empowerment. So however we can facilitate the transition of these women, then we seek to do that. I mean, that's in a nutshell what Jabez House we seek to do.
So Kemar, could you tell us a bit about the Barbados Vagrants and Homeless Society, and what were your reasons for starting this charity?
The Barbados Vagrants and Homeless Society is a charitable organization that focuses on homeless men and women. But the whole concept of the organization is to provide a rehabilitative, reintegrative program for homeless persons, where we actually take them off the streets, place them into one of our homes, and rehabilitate and reintegrate them back into mainstream society. And that is our focus. The reason for starting the Barbados Vagrants and Homeless Society, it was never a dream of mine, and it was never a childhood passion, but it was more so of a spiritual turnaround in my life that's what I believe that God just led me to on the day that I became a Christian, and the day that I actually gave myself to Christ. And says, use me. However, I would have said use me and abuse me in that sense. Just use me however you want. And that is when I heard, I want you to work with the homeless community, and that is why I really started the Barbados Vagrants and Homeless Society.
Kemar, thank you so much for your obedience. We appreciate it now, right? So Shamelle, could you tell us what would be some of the drivers that would make women vulnerable to getting into sex work?
I can definitely say no woman, it's not any woman's dream, when I grow up I want to be no. But what we've seen is financial challenges is always one of the biggest issues. And women, generally in Barbados, we have a lot of single parent headed households. So you have women who just want to be able to take care of their children. They may not have family support. They may not have support generally from maybe others around them. So it's like, well, I have to be able to support myself. And that's definitely one of the things. We've also seen that persons who maybe educationally have had challenges, and then because of those challenges have not been able to get certain jobs, then that would feed into it. And one of the things that I think from a very young age also really predisposes an individual to something like this is that of sexual abuse. In Barbados, we don't want to talk about it, but there's a lot of incest, there's a lot of abuse going on. And if you have a young woman who's been violated her entire life, it really can damage a person's sense of worth, etc.
All right, Kemar, similar question. What are some of the main contributing factors that lead to homelessness, and how big of a role does poverty play in that?
Some of the main contributing causes of homelessness are family, which is the major cause. I know a lot of persons, when they think of homelessness and they think of persons being on the street, they think drugs. Think that this person probably put themselves there because of the amount of drug they've been using over a set time. But we found that family, and we explain family meaning in peer pressure, Many times we see in our culture is that elderly folk always hold the family together. And we, in our Barbadian culture, have a extended family where you have 5 to 6 persons living in the home. When the grandmother or the grandfather dies, who gets the house? And then that's always a challenge. There's always, you're not working, and the pressure comes on the person that is not working. Sometimes we found that things such as mental health is actually a problem because there's no mental health, there's no way of identifying mental health in Barbados. So a lot of persons at young age have mental disabilities, and then they rise as they grow in ages. And then we find that a lot of family put them at the mental, or most cases that they put them outside of the home. And that's where we've seen a serious challenge inside of the family in terms of family are the number one cause for homelessness. And then you have the drugs, that's a contributing factor as well. You would also have mental health, which stays by itself as another contributing factor. Another thing that we're seeing on the rise in Barbados is actually deportation. That is high in terms of the amount of persons that actually are being deported from the States, coming back to Barbados, not doing anyone because they left at a very young age. And that we've seen taking a rise over mental health and the drugs, because a lot of these guys do not know anybody. And I mean, I have men I have to take from the airport or from consuls overseas to actually help them. And even in my program right now, I just had to take on another deportee guy. And then when we start to understand where these guys' background are, most of them spent a lot of time overseas. Poverty, yes, it plays a critical role in terms of homelessness, but it's not a high cause or high contributing factor to homelessness, because homelessness is not respect of whether poverty, sex, or any other thing. It can just come upon anyone at any point. So yes, it plays it, but not at a level where we would want to rate that poverty is actually a contributing factor, but it can play a critical role in terms of homelessness.
Wow, Kemar. I mean, I just learned a lot.
Wow.
That was a loaded response, but one of the things that stood out to me was just how many other social injustices there are at play, and how many of them are at the systematic or infrastructural level, things that we as Barbados, as a society, need to work on. It's not just what's going on within our homes, but on a more economic, societal level. And we're just going to cut to this very interesting conversation I had with Jeremy Stevens, who's the president of the Barbados Economic Society. And Jeremy and I chatted about some of the very similar things you mentioned, and we got a little bit more in depth as to the economic perspective of this whole poverty issue and social injustices at large. We'll be right back.
Grab somebody and tell them hello. Pure happiness will be connect to flow. Smile and cheer because that is we flow. Grab somebody and tell them hello. With your hands in the air, hands in the air, hands in the air, hands in the air. This is how we flow. Yeah. Grab somebody and tell them
This is how we flow.
pure happiness will be connect to flow.
Hi, Jeremy, and welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us to chat about this topic of social injustices. Now, I know that you're president of the Barbados Economic Society. Could you tell me just quickly a bit about the society and the work that you do?
All right, well, since founded in the 1980s, it was a collection of Barbadian economists that got together and shared ideas amongst themselves, wrote papers, really just a forum for intellectual exchange. It did have a history of advocacy, but one that has become even stronger over the last 2 presidents, myself included, and Ryan Strachan. And in Barbados, we just realized as a result of the recession, a lot of people not only felt displaced but uninformed. So we try to make them aware of the economic issues of the day, possible solutions, which we also share with stakeholders like government. But our main interest is ensuring that the average Barbadian is 100% aware of not only what is going on, but what are their choices as a result.
All right, that's very interesting. Now, could you tell me how you would describe the patterns of economic inequality that we have here in Barbados?
Well, it's actually very interesting from a gender perspective. Most statistics show that men are better compensated than women in certain jobs, but then the argument is never extended by when you look at white collar jobs like administration. Of course, there might be more women working in general administration as opposed to executive administration, if you look at it that way. So yes, there's general inequality when you look at an income perspective. When you look at economic inequality with respect to access to opportunity, again, because of we're still a nepotistic society, right, very much a nepotistic society, and that tends to still benefit the males more so than females when you look at higher priced jobs or those that require a lot of specialist skills. So it is a very imbalanced place, Barbados. I don't know if there's a place that has best practice because one either displaces the other. I must say that as a professional, but nonetheless, compared to others that have seemingly struck a better balance, like the Nordic countries, like Europe to an extent, and even in certain parts of Asia as well. We leave a lot wanting, I would admit, economically, socially, when it comes to gender balance and when it comes to gender equality.
All right. So, as relates to poverty, what does that look like for Barbados?
Well, if we want to look at it from a gender perspective, the evidence is there. You are more likely to see, if you're just looking at it from a grassroots perspective, you're more likely to see poverty in men than women if you're walking around. If you're walking around, from economists will look at it that way because you see more of the men on the block. Women might be at home. I'm saying just from a general observational point of view. But simply, if one is to say that women are less likely to get opportunities or equal opportunities than men, then it stands to reason that women might be more so beneath the poverty line than you would find with men. Poverty in Barbados is a strange thing, however, because we do have a social system that takes care of most people, if not all, in terms of access to basic necessities. Although we do complain about the water in the north, and it shuts off ever so often, at least it comes back on. At least it comes back on and is at least provided by a government agency. And nobody has created some secondary market for water. These aren't puff of color tickets, for argument's sake. Right? And when it comes to healthcare, though, the notion is that you might have to pay for certain services in the future, at least is accessible to you no matter your level of education and whatnot. And education has been the great balancer in Barbados, but even so, there's still some very educated people who operate beneath the poverty line.
So, would you say the recent economic recession is responsible for this widening of the poverty gap in Barbados, or is it something else that's a major contributing factor here?
It's a series of factors, to be honest. I mean, I speak about the economy quite often because that's what my profession affords me to do. But it's a number of things. It also comes down, before I even get on to talking about the economy, it comes down to how a Barbadian values his life, right? Whereas our parents used to value community, our grandparents more so, I would say, used to value community a lot more so. Somebody who struggled might have been able to get by with a couple shillings a day. I used to hear my grandmother talk about shillings, and how the butcher would give them at least a bit of the fat off the pig so they can flavor the rice or something when the weekend came. Nobody's willing to do it now. It's more of a materialistic, singular society. One where, and I came up in that generation. I find my thinking going along that way. Although I'm willing to give of my information, but what else? It's not that easy. I would want something in return. That's how I've been trained. And unfortunately, a lot younger people, early 20s thereabouts, think in a more ardent manner, stringent, ardent manner about the materialism and their singularity really is about. You can find it in the way people dress. If you look back at, and this is not me coming across as a prude, conservative person. I'm just an observer. Whereas you would find back in the 50s, look at old Barbadiana pictures. Everybody dressed basically the same based on their income class. I'm not saying if it was right or wrong. I'm just talking about how people thought. It was like groupthink. Everybody thought about government jobs as being a way out. And that persisted until probably a couple years ago. Nowadays, people are more into individuality. They're thinking about their hair. They're doing their hair in all kinds of different colors. I have no problem with it. They dress in all kinds of ways. I mean, 10 years ago, I couldn't have gotten away working where I work, the way I dress, or going in public fora and looking the way I look without being stigmatized. But now it's a little more accepted. Beers are all of a sudden acceptable again. So individuality is preached. And therefore, when this recession hit, most Barbadians were thinking about how they could survive, not how we could survive. There's no more we. It might sound very dire, what I'm saying, but there's no more we. If there was a we, there would have been more, I don't want to use the word protest, but stronger action, stronger, I don't want to use the word rebellion, but basically civil disobedience given what has been going on the last 3-4 years. And unfortunately, we don't think about community. So yes, the whole poverty gap, the widening of it, is exacerbated by our change in values.
Just like how I learned in school, the social and the economic are so closely knit together.
And you need to tell economists that more often. Not economists, tell politicians that, because they love to talk about political economies being different from economics. And I'm like, no, one leads to the other leads to the other one.
That's true.
You can't be separate.
So how can we improve our situation?
Whoa. All right. I don't want to get too technical, but but it comes, all right. It means we need to do long-term planning. And the reason why is that you're trying to, firstly, you're going to want to unwind certain values that have built up over time. The Bajan is no longer willing to fight for community, as I said, but more so willing to fight for himself. When one is willing to fight more for community, one is more willing to sacrifice for the long term. What we do need to come out of this hole, yes, we're going to come out in some form or fashion. There's a short-term recovery going on right now, but it's not going to sustain. If it does, I'm not staking my professionalism on it or my profession on it, but I will, or professional integrity or reputation on it. But I will tell you that I would be very surprised if this growth sustains for another 2 years. And that's a problem. You want years of sustained growth to drive any economy. And unfortunately, our policymakers are reacting like a man who just lost his money at the craps table. They need that money now, and however they can get it, they will take that risk. But the problem is, you might sell your grandmother's TV to get back this money, right? If you follow where I'm coming from, somebody else who might be near or dear to you, your populace, will take a big hit in order for you to do this short-term recovery.
I think a lot of people felt that way when the tuition fee situation at UWI changed, and we were all of a sudden forced to think about future generations and how that would affect them and the legacy that was no longer being left. But we wanted to cut that price.
It's healthcare, it's everything that we held dear, because we had a social system that was envied.
Yep.
Now the Caribbean doesn't even look to us for thought leadership anymore, because apparently there's no thought. So, but no, not to be too critical or anything. The whole recovery has to be staked on us choosing not only to shore up the industries we do have. So tourism still is a big breadwinner when it comes to foreign exchange, but we have too many industries that depend only on import and not exports. And I love talking to guys like you're a cameraman right now, whom I'm not even sure.
Who is the cameraman right now?
His name will count to the credits, right?
Yes, it
so
will.
People would know who I'm talking about. That looks at export opportunities.
Cameraman, big up yourself.
3 or 4 years ago, or even 5, 6, 7 years ago, most guys that wanted to do what you were doing focused about here. And just here in Barbados, but no, we've got the intellectual capacity to go into Guyana and start shows like this, to sell services to Guyana, to sell services to St. Kitts. There were just a few, an elect few that did that for years, but you want a new Barbadian thinking that his value has to be beyond the 166 square miles. And I'm not even talking about leaving, because migration, given the kind of technology, the proliferation of technology we've got, migration makes little sense now. You can be here and work anywhere.
That's right.
Right, and work anywhere. You just need to be able to find opportunities, and they're there right in front of you. So we have to accept this brave new world.
Wow. Well, thank you, Jeremy, for this incredibly insightful conversation. I definitely learned a lot, and it's given me a lot to think about our situation in Barbados and the opportunities that we can seize and take a hold of to improve our situation.
You know when you taste it, and pure, water filtration for you, and pure. filtration for you.
Your own supply of pure drinking water right from your NPR faucet. NPR removes the widest range of tap water contaminants by world-class engineering for long-lasting operation.
And pure water filtration for you.
You would have just seen a clip of a conversation I had with Jeremy Stevens, president of the Barbados Economic Society. And it's always interesting to hear, even from Kemar Saffrey, who's here in the studio with us, and from Jeremy as well, how many contributing factors there are that we don't think about. You know, we have our stereotypical perceptions of how we think it goes, or what we think contributes, or why we think people are where they're at. But it's always interesting to learn that there's a lot more to it. It's a much bigger picture.
Yeah, I was totally surprised that for both of them, family was a big contributing factor.
Yes.
That really shocked me, you guys. But Shamelle, I'd like to get into asking you, what are the things that can be done to assist these women who are now involved in sex work?
Well, I think generally there are a lot of things that persons can do. I will definitely say that I think generally people feel that there's nothing that can be done. But as a society, I think everybody has a role to play. I mean, Jabez, yes, we are doing our part, but, you know, as we learned from the conversation, family can play a very huge role in terms of being able to provide a proper support system and a proper network for persons so they are not predisposed or vulnerable to, you know, just getting themselves into things that they really don't want to. At Jabez, we definitely seek to empower these women. You know, we don't focus, I personally have a challenge with the welfare mentality where it's just wanting to just give people and just, no, you're not a charity case. How can I see where you're at and really be able to offer a viable solution? So Jabez, you know, we see, okay, you are here, you don't want to be here. Maybe your challenge is a financial issue, or there are other things maybe psychosocially that are affecting you. So at Jabez, we seek to provide free of cost vocational training skills in a variety of courses. So hairdressing, you know, technology, whatever it is. And we basically help to show the ladies, well, how can you use this skill that you've learned to, you know, become self-sufficient apart from sex work. We also provide free medical care, free psychosocial support in terms of counseling, food, I mean, anything at all that can make that process as smooth as possible and transition and can facilitate the transitioning process as smooth as possible, we seek to do. And that's something I think that anybody can do, you know, I mean, you may not be able to go and counsel a woman, but I'm sure that you can say, okay, well, here's where she's at, you know, how can we help? I have a couple of cake mixers and I'm not using them, but if this woman wants to get her business started that she can be self-sufficient, I can contribute that, you know, I can do that. Those are things that doesn't require a whole lot from us. And one of the things that I would definitely want to say here, I think that as a society in Barbados, we have really grown away from being our brother's keeper and from really looking out for each other. And a lot of times we have a lot of things happening that nobody wants to talk about. So you may be living in a community, you know that a girl is being molested, let's say, by, I don't know, father, uncle, whoever. And it's like, well, it's not my business. So, you know, I ain't saying that to anybody, ain't calling my name. And then you see this child maybe years on the road finding herself in a place where she starts to act out. And the first thing we want to say, oh, she what this, she ain't a good. And you don't know how a lot of things that happen when a person is young, how it really begins to shape that individual in terms of their self-worth, their identity, all of those things. But as a society, we have a right to speak out against things that we're seeing happening. And I think that if we begin to look at the root of a lot of things and we begin to take ownership of those things, I think that can begin to stem the tide of things that persons will find themselves involved in later on in life, rather than waiting until they get there for us to then have to try to see how we can provide assistance.
Well said, Shamelle. And now, Kemar, you would have started off talking about how this was never really a childhood dream of yours. You were not always particularly passionate about social injustices in general and not this specific issue, which I think is good because a lot of people feel the same way. We're not all compassionate about social injustices. Many of us are zeroed in on our specific lives and our own issues. So what advice could you give? And you could probably draw from your own experience of going from somebody who wasn't really bothered to somebody who saw a need and wanted to fill that need and meet that need. What advice could you give for people to kind of pull us out of our place of self-absorption and, you know, just always thinking about us, and to be more compassionate and to be more aware of what's going on around us and who's in need around us?
That's a very great question, Dani. I think for me, as I said, my turning point would have been when I actually became a Christian, and that's when I found purpose in doing what I'm doing right now. My real passion would have come about when I actually saw the transformation of the individuals that I would have been working with. And my advice to a lot of young persons or persons in a nutshell that want to get involved, because there are some persons that want to get involved in this area of homelessness, Shamelle area with the ladies and a lot of different areas, and probably don't know how to, or probably in some sense don't feel have that passion to get up yet, or trying to wait for the tug. And I believe that the more you get involved in charitable work, whether or not it's at our level or it is at other organizations which may be closer to their heart, that it really would then pull and start to bring other people into the whole social justice, and we'll be able to eradicate that the sooner rather than later. And I said that's something I believe that persons could do. I mean, we have a lot of persons that do volunteer with us, persons that never had a care in the world about what we do, but when they get in and they're hands-on, they then tend to see what we do, what it feels like to really hear a story from the other side, what their past would have been like and stuff like that. So we really believe that the more persons get involved in charitable work, or in whether it be at the community level, it be at the charitable level, and really start to click themselves to it. And that would be my advice to people that really want to be able to work in the social injustice areas, would be to definitely find an organization, volunteer. Yeah. It's not always that you need to start it on your own. It's not, because I know many times when persons think about these areas, I have the solution, let me start it, let me go after it. And so then most of the times it's just emotion at the time that never really plays out to become anything in the future. Mm-hmm. So I always tell people that once you want to get involved in these areas that we work in, work with an existing organization, get on the ground. And even for corporate Barbados that likes to get involved in these areas for the corporate social responsibility. I had many times when organizations came to me and said, I want to donate some money for a food feeding or something of the other. And I said to them, you know what, if you're not going to donate your time and your employees' time, don't donate the money. Because I want you to be a part of what we're doing, to feel more compelled to what we're doing and to understand what we're doing more in depth. And we found that has been successfully working in terms of how we bring awareness to what we do, in terms of more persons, more employees, more top level executives being involved in our work becomes more of a widespread for us, and then it really plays on the bottom end of their work. And we found that to be very proactive in terms of what we do. So I would say get involved in a charitable organization, community level, and work with them.
Definitely.
Guys, thank you so much for that. Like, Barbados and people at large, there's so many things we can do to assist in eradicating poverty in our societies. Guys, get up, let's go. Right now we're going to take a break here, and we're going to take a look at Bourne for Business, who'll be talking a little more about charities and telling us how we can get more involved and what they're all about.
Welcome everyone to another episode of Bourne for Business. I am your host, Akeem Bourne, and today I'm going to be teaching you on the 4 main types of entrepreneurship. So for those of you that are interested in beginning your entrepreneurial journey, I want you guys to pay attention because this information will be very useful to you. So let's begin. The first form of entrepreneurship is called small business entrepreneurship. This type of entrepreneurship usually makes up over 90% of all the companies in most countries. They usually have under 50 employees, and guess what? They usually get investment from family, friends, and small business loans. Some examples of these would be carpenters, small retail stores, or even hairdressers or masons, anything along those lines. Number 2, this form of entrepreneurship is called startup scale entrepreneurship. This form of entrepreneurship usually attracts large investors and venture capitalists because they usually have innovative ideas that go on to change the world. Example, Facebook. Number 3, this form of entrepreneurship is called large company entrepreneurship. This is when managers and leaders in organizations create an environment for entrepreneurial thinking so that employees and individuals in the organization can propel the company forward using creative and innovative techniques. And lastly, this form of entrepreneurship is my favorite. It's called social entrepreneurship. This is where individuals and leaders take on the social responsibility of solving problems in the community, whether it is in their particular regions, anything along those lines to solve social needs. So no matter what form of startup or enterprise you decide to embark on, whether it may be small business entrepreneurship, startup scale entrepreneurship, large company entrepreneurship, or social entrepreneurship, remember guys that it makes sense to have a component of social responsibility so that we can continue to serve our world and impact our communities. So I hope this information has empowered you, as this has been another episode of Bourne for Business.
Hey you guys, so we're back and you just saw Bourne for Business. Wasn't that an interesting conversation?
Of course.
It was so cool how we got to learn a little bit more about charities and about how it's set up and the structure of it. You know, that's so interesting. But Shamelle and Kemar, thank you guys again for coming. But we'd like to just ask you to just give us your final thoughts on social injustices as in regards to poverty, and tell us, what more can we do as a society to really eradicate this issue?
I believe that we need to work collectively together. There's many times that we end up wanting to do things, and I would have said that even in the volunteerism aspect of it, that many times when persons think about a cause or think about what they can do, they always run to start organizations and think that, okay, I have the answer, I have the solution, let me go do it. I think that if we were to work together as an organization, because many times they may have 4 or 5 persons out there doing one cause, right? When the 4 or 5 could actually come together, make it a little bigger and actually reach more with one main organization, and also try to tap into the regional, international level where they could collaborate with other organizations that are existing. Now, no one person could actually rate social injustice. Yeah. And each of us comes up with an idea, and some of our ideas are still similar with just a different tweak of how we believe it could be done because somebody's not doing it to our expectations. So I believe that the more that we work together as a team, and the more that we can be, as Shamelle said, really our brothers keepers in terms of how we look at these social injustices within our own society and start to eradicate it. But it would always work better. It will always work better when there's collaborative efforts and not just the one man show. Because we've seen many times that persons do go there to do it, and as I said, sometimes it's just the emotion that works up in a lot of people that want to do it, and it's not something that's going to continue. When you're working with persons that are very vulnerable, they're looking at long term. They're looking at sustainability. They're looking at how your organization and how long your organization is going to be around. Because one of the things is, for these persons, is that when they do come out of the situation they're in, they want to refer a friend that they knew that, or they know that is in the same position. Because they would have been a project of your organization, and they want to be able to say, look, to the friend, go ahead, work with these persons. And I'm saying, if there's a collaborative effort, then there's a bigger possibility for a longevity of that organization to be around years after years without us being there as leaders and still functioning to be able to help more and more persons, but it will always work successfully. Now, I've been all over the world to see it, where organizations are grouping because they found out that the single-handed working is not effective, it's not working, because you're touching somebody and then another organization is going to the said person, and then another organization is going to the said person, all with a different perspective of how they can help this individual, which in some instances only put the individual back in the same state that they once was in. So from that, I've collaborated with a lot of organizations worldwide that brings about the success that we have today. And I think that would be the best thing for Barbadian charities or individuals to collaborate to end social injustice.
Wow, thank you for that so much, Kemar. Totally appreciate it. And now, Shamelle, could you tell us your opinion?
I cannot help but stress really looking at the root. What are we doing as a society? What are we doing as a family? The family structure is the thing that is going to hold everything together. And if we don't get it right from the time children are small, and if we are just so concerned with all of the, the material things, then we're going to see that as a nation, as the world in general, we will always have social injustices. But if I'm one who's going to speak out about something that's happening, or I'm going to see this is my family, I have to, do my part to make sure that this is good, and I'm loving on them, I'm affirming my daughter, I'm, treating my son well, and doing all of those things, then it really would minimize a lot of the challenges that we further see later on in life. Because a tree doesn't just get big. everything has a root, and we have to be able to be honest with ourselves about sometimes what we have done to contribute to these things. There's the pressure on the outside, to look good. Men, just see women as like some sort of sexual buffet, those kinds of things. So there's so many factors that feed into any given social injustice. So what role am I playing to feed this? How can I then step back from this and be able to help and offer a real solution to these things? So I think working together for sure, but then also, being accountable to others and, speaking out, being a voice, looking at our families, being just, adamant that I'm going to give this my all because I have to be able to take care of those people that are entrusted to me at this time. Those are some of the things I believe that would definitely help us to not rid ourselves of it, but really begin to address some of those things. Oh, and empowerment. Cannot help but say this. If we're going to address any social issues, we cannot just see people as victims. It's so easy to say, oh, that poor homeless man, oh, that poor guy, or oh, that woman, oh, Lord. No. See past that. This is a person that has worth, that has value, and what can I do to bring that out? And if you're able to empower an individual on any level, whether it's teaching them a skill, whether it's helping them to get employment, whatever it is, that's definitely going to be the thing that's going to begin to address those things. So once person's mindsets begin to change and they begin to not see themselves as victims and, no, I'm stronger than this, I'm bigger than this, and I can not always be here, that's definitely going to be key, rather than just operating in the poor me, victim mentality. Yeah.
Thank you guys. Excellent points, both of you. And I just want to thank you both for being here, for dishing with us on this very interesting topic of social injustices. We always come in thinking we know how it's going to go, and then
totally
it goes
opposite.
totally opposite, but in a great way. So thank you both for your valuable contributions to this conversation.
Yes, thank you.
That's right. And we're actually going to go to Militant in the Streets right now, because it's all well and good to know how we feel in here, but what do the people of Barbados think about this topic of social injustices? Militant man, we'll find out.
How hard it is for you as a youngster to make things happen in the streets?
Boy, it's a big struggle in the ghetto. It's very hard. It ain't easy. It gotta get and do what you gotta do in this society. From my heart. Real thing.
So let me ask you a question. Like, would you say that since leaving school, that in terms of even getting writing applications to get jobs or one way or the other, it seems that people don't even check for the people from the hood?
People don't check for you, So for instance, like I was saying, politicians, you can see them running about in your face when it's election time. After that, you don't see anybody, them even carry on, gear, who two walkers, who two lawnmowers, do this, do that, you know what I mean? Ain't nothing. Them is only war running in your face when it's time for them, and then for themselves, them and for me, you know what I'm saying? It's very hard, man. Then know when the youngsters, they say that the youngsters didn't want to work, that the youngsters didn't want to work. You understand me?
When I lost my job, I did home for must about 6 to 9 months before I get any income tax. What you call that thing? And I guess benefit, anything. So still, the picnic depend on me. Wifey depend on me. Everybody depend on me. And I still got to look for that money. So, you know what I mean? It's the same situation where the NCC people or whoever that get fired or sent home or whatever, and then the government ain't want to get the money for all that time out or whatever the case is. I think that was real unfair to them people who put all them years and all that time. And then now go get you all a foolish tribunal system and think to see if you can get your money while when people home, they got the bills to pay, they got the children to send school, and then they lost the years and a whole heap of folly and a whole heap of.
Right now we need a pavilion. We want all sorts of things. The young people they want jobs.
What about lights? You got lights for the pavilion?
We ain't even got a pastor, so we can't get no lights. We don't have a pastor, so we can get lights. You get me? Yeah. So tell the politicians and them, look after the young people. If they want betterment in the community, then they look after the young people, because the young people need a lot. Then they come out and talk to them. Don't only come and talk when it's election time. It ain't make no sense. That's all I have to say.
So do you think that the talent, if you mentioned your son, Kobe Bell, do you think that the talent, sometimes the talent is be so hard to come out of the society because they don't check for the people in the hood?
Correct. That is correct. But if they don't check for them, the young people can say, well, them and checking for me. Nobody ain't helping me, so we ain't getting the help. Call it that. That way they got a lot of crime and violence.
And we have a Kobe Bell, a Barbados national player, and you just heard his mom speaking about the difficulties and how tough it is. And Kobe, since your mom mentioned about stuff, what about you? How hard it is for you to even coming from the ghetto, to even get recognition or even get, I don't know, sponsorship, or how hard it is? How hard it is for you?
It wasn't very hard, but the hardest part was training, commitment. But my mother and my father was there for me, so it was much easier than other people.
So in terms of so you would say that because sometimes coming out of school, having an education, it don't always get you far, but at least you would say sports was one of the things that helped facilitate you to at least get out to the hard economic times.
Yeah. For sports, it ain't all about sports, nor it ain't all about education. But sports for me, better.
So what do you think needs to be done then more in the community then? Or let me ask, what is not being done and what do you think should be done?
More the politicians, as Dario said, coming and looking around and help sponsoring, getting at least a cricket team and a football team, help facilitate the pasture that we have. Sports council don't even come and cut the pasture. Sometimes we have to cut it ourselves.
You've heard it live from a Kobe Bell, and these are the situations, some of the injustices that the people in Flat Rock themselves, the hyperzone base, are feeling, and they are speaking out, letting them know exactly what is going on the inside. You have heard it from here. Thank you for tuning in. Militant in the Streets.
All right, guys, and that was Militant in the Streets, bringing you the perspective from the streets, bringing it into the studio.
Yeah.
Always exciting to hear what Militant has to say and what he finds out on the streets of Barbados. What did you think, Dani?
I mean, it's always interesting to hear what other people think about things we have our own perceptions about. And it's that Militant in the Street is never ever a dull moment, and there's never a dull perspective in Barbados, and I love that.
Yes.
In this whole thing though, I think what stood out to me most was the fact that we can empower people to act and make our own societies better. Like, that stood out for me. What stood out for you?
Two things. The first thing that stood out for me was definitely the family, and just everything coming back to that nucleus of the family, and how important it is to start from home and edify and, like you're saying, empower your children and just manage your families in a way where you are raising up upstanding citizens that can go and then produce and empower and impact other people. And it really starts with the family. That really hit home for me. And the second thing that hit home was just, as Kemar said, cooperation makes it happen, guys. Collaborating, working together. There's always a need for us to get back to that community spirit that we once had, that is still there, but we just need to bring it back out, and collaborating not just on a national level, but regionally and internationally as well, because I know there are some incredible individuals and organizations doing great things to end social injustice or eradicate or minimize, however you want to put it, all around the world.
So what do you want to do? Are you going to get involved?
I will. Will you?
I'm going to get
involved.
with me?
Okay.
Guys, we hope you guys get involved too. So thank you so much for staying tuned to Dishing It with Dani, because we definitely served up more than just talk on this issue. Stay tuned for next week, you guys.
Bye.